Welcome to Creating Art with Jenny. Today I'm going to share with you my way of painting baby blue eucalyptus. It's one of my favorite eucalyptus because I love the hue of blue. So let's get started. Alright, I wanted to give you an up-close little demo of how I create the leaves to get the different hues, and I first start off with basically just filling and this is my sketchbook paper, so it's not as good as my watercolor paper, but it still will work for purposes of demonstration. So I'm going to get the whole leaf wet. And eucalyptus, I'll talk about what the leaves shapes are in a second because there's really no right or wrong way to all of it. And I'm going to leave that for just a second. And I am using Prussian blue because I love Prussian blue, and especially for these colors. And so as I come in, I'm going to dip my brush in and get a more concentrated color of the Prussian blue and put it down at the bottom. And then I'm going to go back, clean off my brush with water, come back to the very top and work my way down and let it start to bleed, coming around the edges. So it will kind of make a more natural reaction in the leaf depending on how much you put in there. So that is one way artists create something that looks authentic, and then when it dries it's a little bit more natural looking. It doesn't look so unnatural. Except you do need to make your leaves look a little bit more natural than what mine are. Alright, another way to do it is just to start off with some clear, if you want your more of a pale color for your leaf, and then just drop in down at the bottom. And depending on how your paper is bending and folding, it does kind of sometimes make it difficult. I'm a little bit on a slant on mine. And this one is going to be more of just a flat type of leaf that you might see from the side. And some of the eucalyptus leaves have a tinge of green in them. So I'm just going to go in and add just a little bit of green for reality's sake. So as that's settling, it will dry nicely and I'll have some more wider edges, and if I still want some more dark in the middle, I can come in and add just a little bit more here, sometimes bringing it up. There we go. And once it's dry, one of the things I will tend to do is take my smaller brush and just for hardly any accent, I will come back in and at times put in a little bit of an edge. But not a lot, because sometimes you want that soft. I had one watercolor teacher say, you know, when you put in an edge, one side should be soft and the other side should be hard. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but I kind of tend to like that, and I thought that was pretty smart. So I am ready now to show you how I paint my real leaf. So this was a finished one that I did, and I did two different ways. And then you can see here I have variations in color. That always helps with your depth. And I did go ahead and pre-draw mine because that is just sometimes the easiest way to go. So I'm going to get a little bit closer so you can see. And I can leave that right here. Alright, so as I tend to go, I'm going to start with my lighter color first. And I'm not making every leaf light. I'm just going to probably do every other one, and I kind of like to alternate it And then I'm not also making it just a solid white. I mean a solid color. I'm going to come back in and leave some variation. So some of them might start off like that. And over here add just maybe a tinge of green before I move on. And since this one is light, I'll make this one dark, and I'll go in and make this one light. And if I want it to be lighter at the top, I'm going to come in and clean my brush off and let that flow up for a more natural look. And then I'm going to make this one a little bit, I'm going to make it the light. I like to do all my light ones first, just then I'm kind of using the same kind of color, and it helps. Kind of alternating a little bit. And so here I might want to add just a little bit of green, clean my brush, and add it to my paper. And I know this is pretty light, so I might go back in and darken it. Another thing with watercolor, if it's the perfect color when you lay it down, then most likely it is too light when you are done. So that is something that is very true. And you always want your colors to be a little bit darker than what you think, because they will always dry lighter. So that's light, dark. I like to not always leave the back ones the same ones. It needs to be just varied. And sometimes while they're still wet, I'll come in and add some darker colors to kind of let them go ahead and flow. Remember, when you're dealing with good watercolor paper, you can easily do that while it's still wet. When it's a sketchbook paper, unless it's really good, it's much harder to do, because it tends to just suck up the water a little bit better. And sometimes I do just like to leave some white holes in there. I think that's fine to do that. Alright, so I already can tell that I'm getting, some of this is just too light and it's not varied enough, so I'm going to drop in some more of my Prussian blue. I kind of like to make either like a ragged, jagged edge at the bottom to let it spread, or sometimes like a little mountain that is coming in. And since this one had a little bit of green, I'm going to come back in and throw some green in there, kind of keep that consistent with what I was doing. I love blue-green as well. Okay, so as this dries, I'm going to be thinking about if there's something in here I don't like. And of course, with me, there's always things in here I don't like about what I do. Watercolor to me is one of the most challenging things, because it's always like you think it looks one way and you turn around and it dries and it looks another, and you're like, what happened? I could have sworn I thought it was going to turn out like that, and it just didn't. Like, I'm still having, this is not turning out as much as I want, so I'm really going to come back in and drop some more color in. Okay, so we're going to let this dry before I paint the next one. Okay, my light leaves have dried, and so now I'm going to go back in with a darker Prussian blue, and starting with the top one right here. And I do like to, I don't mind the pencil lines when they're on there. Some people don't like them. But I always find, especially when I'm trying to learn something, that the pencil lines just give me guidance, and sometimes they add depth. A lot of famous watercolor artists, you can see their pencil lines. So if they don't care, I don't know why I should really care, but I think that's a personal preference. That's honestly what I think. Well, it's really dark, so I'm going to really kind of dry off my brush, and I have a lot of water in here, so kind of pick it up. Remember, when you're using good watercolor paper, it really is forgiving, and you can pick paint up and not worry about it too much. So my goal is just to make these leaves darker. I just want, like I said, variation in the color of the leaves. So I'm picking up more paint, a little bit darker, so that when I'm done, you can see how they are different. I'm going to make this one a little bit more blue-green. Apparently I made that one like that look a little bit better. Okay, so while some of this is wet, I'm going to come in and switch to my smaller brush and drop in a little bit more of an intense blue, especially maybe right in here. And this one seems to have dried a little bit, so as I finish painting that, I'm going to come in from the bottom and add some water, and then when I touch it, it'll be a little bit, it'll flow a little bit better. This one was still wet enough that I could bring in some paint and let it flow. It is fun to watch paint just do its thing organically. And I'm also going to come in and add Alright, so I'm still working on this, trying to gather some more depth in all of these, but It is a matter of sometimes just waiting until, you know, the paint is, that's a lot of, and sometimes I will use a hairdryer, but this is not a whole lot of waiting, and so I don't always use one. But if you're not that patient, you can definitely use a hairdryer. So the goal is to have some kind of variation in each one that you did. Because that's how organic things are. They're never really the same color. That they have variations in them, and the dark colors really do kind of draw your eyes to where they should, you know, helps you move through your painting. So you definitely need to add some dark in there. Have your dark and lights, and then I'm still working on trying to get some better greens in some of these, because I really do think the green blue is pretty, and I've seen that on the eucalyptus plant, so I'll add some little green up there. And it also helps it not just to be, I mean, plants are never just blue, obviously we know that, but alright, so I am going to let this dry once more. I don't want to touch this one yet because this is still pretty wet, and if I do, that could be a problem. Up here, I would like to get rid of this hard edge a little bit because I don't like how that turned out. So that's a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to leave it alone. So you guys know that I do like to continue to mess with things. And you can do that. I mean, you can kind of do that on good watercolor paper. All right, we're going to let it dry, and I'll come right back. Okay, I did take a hairdryer to some of my things. They're not quite dry, but mostly dry. And so I'm going to go back with some of these ones that are just same color, and I'm going to add a little bit of depth in here. So just to kind of change it up just a little. It's just a very light texture. I don't want it to change too much, and not everything has to change, but it is kind of nice when you see variance. I'm trying to soften that edge just a tinge. Alright, overall I'm fairly happy with it. I'm going to come in and add just some very, very few hard edges. It's not necessary to do too many, but sometimes a hard edge will kind of draw your eye in, and it's not like you want to go in and outline things. And I still don't know why I'm having trouble with that leaf. I don't really like it. So just a few here and there to kind of gather that. Alright, now I'm ready to go in and add my stem. Okay, I'm ready to paint my stem, and I'm using raw umber. And I like to go in first and just paint all of it, or almost all of it, just with a light color. And then I will come back in and add my shadows. And if I want to leave any white, I will try to do that, or just make it super light. Alright, so now we're going to let that almost dry. It'll dry pretty quick because it is not much, there was not much water on there. And then I'm going to come in and get just a lot more paint on my brush, not a lot of water, because when I come in underneath and very carefully make this darker, creating a shadow and maybe giving it an edge right here. And so as you're painting, especially the baby blue, they rotate. They're kind of fascinating things. So they'll go this way, and then they'll turn this way, and then this way. And I have two this way, but then they turn this way again. They are not just, and they are sometimes stacked way closer. I put mine further apart so you could see them a little bit better. But they're not just turned all the same way. So I really had fun. I looked at a lot of pictures, because I don't have any here with me to look at. And then I always, before I start to paint something, I just draw it in my sketchbook, and then I look at it and I practice it. And so these are my finished pieces. Let me see, can I go out? I think I can go out. There we go. And as an artist, you should always sign. And my art teacher, Bill Worrell, was like, don't you dare sign that in your, he goes, you make sure you sign it with your black, don't do a pen. He says, you do it in watercolor. So he was my professional teacher. So there you go. Self. I'm not always best at that, but all right. So there we go. Here's my one I did for you guys. Here's my other two, and then if you want to see what I did in my sketchbook real quick, I kind of went through, and this is where I was noticing the leaves alternate, and I was drawing them different ways and kind of looking at them. So that was just kind of fun. But I really did enjoy the colors of this. They're very festive. It's great. You know, you can go to like Michael's or the home store, and you can see these beautiful paintings of this. And now you know how to do it on your own. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you will go try to paint some baby blue eucalyptus leaves, and I will be putting out more videos for the other kinds of eucalyptus leaves. Have a good night or day.